All right, let's really dive into something today that feels incredibly timely for so many of us. You know how the world of personal finance can often feel like this overwhelming, jargon-filled labyrinth. It's just easy to get lost or, worse, paralyzed. Well, we've picked up a book, J.L. Collins' The Simple Path to Wealth, that promises to be a powerful antidote to all that complexity. The title itself sparks this huge question for me. Can building real wealth, true financial independence, actually be simple? That's really what we're going to explore for you.
It's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Collins, who is truly a seasoned financial veteran, makes an incredibly compelling case for yes. His entire career has been dedicated to stripping away the mystique from personal finance. And this book, well, it serves as a remarkable roadmap. At its heart, his philosophy is about achieving financial independence through very low-cost index fund investing, meticulously avoiding those high fees that often just, silently erode your wealth, and sidestepping the often fruitless kind of stress-inducing game of trying to beat the market. The book really holds out the promise of a path to grow wealth, dare I say, effortlessly, which I think for many people sounds almost too good to be true.
Effortlessly is certainly what grabs your attention. But he doesn't start there, does he? He begins almost surprisingly with a foundational principle that hits really hard.
Yeah.
Debt. Collins kicks off chapter 1 with this incredibly strong stance, calling debt an unacceptable burden and a vicious, pernicious destroyer of wealth-building potential. Wow, that's intense. My immediate reaction, and I imagine maybe you feel the same way listening, is, wait a sec, what about what people call good debt? Things like, a mortgage for a home or maybe student loans for education. Aren't those sometimes seen as necessary stepping stones or even beneficial investments? Why does he seem so incredibly wary of all debt, like without exception?
That's a really insightful question, and it's precisely where Collins challenges a lot of our conventional wisdom. He clarifies that even what we label as good debt carries inherent risks and can very directly obstruct your path to true financial independence. Take a mortgage, for instance.
Yeah.
He doesn't say all mortgages are inherently bad, but he emphatically stresses the danger of buying too much house,
Right, getting house poor.
Exactly. A larger mortgage means substantially increased ongoing costs for decades, which in turn ties up a huge chunk of your future earnings. That future income isn't free to be invested or used for other goals. It's committed to that payment. And student loans. Oof. He paints a truly cautionary picture there, highlighting their long-lasting consequences and the significant burden they place on young borrowers, often before they've even really had a chance to, gain solid footing in their careers.
So it's not just the amount of debt, but how it impacts your freedom and future options.
Yeah.
Even if it's for something that seems productive on the surface.
Precisely. And he's not just critical. He offers a very practical step-by-step debt repayment strategy. His advice is straightforward. Make a detailed list of every single debt you have, every single one. Then you prioritize them by interest rate, any debt with an interest rate over 5%. His strong recommendation is to attack that aggressively, paying it off as quickly as humanly possible.
Okay, laser focus on the high interest.
Yeah. For debts with interest between 3–5%, you can consider a more moderate, maybe slower repayment pace. And if you're lucky enough to have debt under 3%, he actually suggests you might be better off investing that money instead, as your investments are likely to earn more than that low interest rate over time. But the real key here, regardless of the rate, is to ruthlessly cut non-essential spending, even the small stuff, the seemingly insignificant expenses, and direct every single extra dollar towards that highest interest debt first. It's a laser focus.
That sounds incredibly disciplined, like really disciplined. And I can definitely see how that takes immense focus, almost a psychological shift, because it's not just about the numbers, is it?
No, not at all. And that's where Collins really shines, I think. He delves deeply into the emotional and psychological effects of being indebted. He describes it as leading to profound feelings of shame, guilt, and helplessness. He even uses the vivid phrase that being in debt is like being in a prison of one's own making. Yeah, it's more than just a financial burden. It restricts your choices, it adds so much stress, and it severely limits your personal freedom and autonomy.
A prison of your own making. That's a powerful image. It really hits home how debt can feel like a constraint on your personal freedom, not just your bank account. So how does that connection extend to what he famously calls FU money? I've heard that phrase tossed around, but Collins really brings it to life beyond just, a catchy term.
He absolutely does. FU money isn't about being rude or reckless, not at all. It's about accumulating enough financial resources to possess true choices and profound independence in your life. Real agency. It's having the ability to say no, maybe to jobs that drain you, or situations that compromise your integrity, or even relationships that don't align with your deepest values or needs because you are not financially beholden to them.
Right, you have options.
Exactly. It embodies the ultimate form of financial freedom. And this all ties back to his core, remarkably simple formula for building wealth. Spend less than you earn, invest the surplus, and avoid debt. Simple as that, really.
I'm still kind of grappling with their blanket statement on debt, though. While I completely understand his powerful point about, avoiding the trap of being beholden to anyone, lots of people might argue that a well-managed mortgage, maybe at a historically low interest rate, can be a powerful financial tool. Or that certain types of student loans are pretty essential investments like human capital, that lead to higher future earnings. It feels like he's maybe dismissing these calculated risks that some people embrace. How does Collins specifically address these more nuanced situations? Or is his stance just that firm?
You've hit on a crucial point, yeah, and something that I'm sure listeners are thinking about too. Collins' stance is incredibly firm. He largely dismisses those strategic borrowing arguments, mainly for simplicity. His core counterargument to things like mortgages as an investment is that, well, it's an illiquid asset, plus it often comes with significant carrying costs, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, all that stuff, and it ties up a massive amount of capital that could otherwise be earning returns in the stock market. For him, the focus is always on freedom and liquidity.
Okay, freedom and liquidity.
Exactly. Well, some economists do argue that strategic borrowing can enhance financial growth, like maybe a business loan to expand or education leading to higher lifetime earnings. Collins' philosophy is really rooted in eliminating anything that could potentially impede direct, unencumbered investment in those low-cost index funds and the rapid attainment of FU money.
Okay.
He believes the psychological peace and the direct path to financial independence you get from being debt-free far outweigh any potential leveraged gains. It's a very conservative, you could say risk-averse, and definitely freedom-focused approach. And it's important for you, the listener, to understand that while it offers immense simplicity, it's not the only financial strategy out there.
That really clarifies his perspective.
Oh.
Okay, so once you're clear of debt, or at least have a disciplined plan for it, the next step is investing. Collins talks about harnessing the world's most powerful wealth-building tool in Chapter 2. But, and this is where I always get tripped up, how do ordinary people navigate market volatility? We constantly hear about crashes, ups and downs, constant fluctuations. It feels chaotic. And this whole idea of picking winning stocks, I've always doubted that. It feels less like investing and more like pure gambling to me. Is that fair?
Your instincts are completely spot on there. Collins is incredibly direct about market dynamics. He makes it clear that market crashes are normal, they're inevitable, and most importantly, the market always recovers and trends upwards in the long term. Always. He uses a fantastic analogy. Investing is like a roller coaster. Yeah, there will be thrilling climbs and maybe some stomach-dropping descents, but the track overall goes up. The trick is staying seated for the whole ride. Don't jump off mid-plunge.
Huh. Easier said than done sometimes, right?
Absolutely, which is why his core message here is all about psychological resilience and sticking to a simple buy and hold strategy. He even has that famous, almost blunt line, "Toughen up, cupcake."
I love that one.
It's his charming way of saying you need to emotionally detach yourself from the daily market noise and manage your emotional responses to market downturns. Don't panic sell. Instead, view these downturns not as disasters, but as incredible buying opportunities, like a sale on stocks. It's a chance to pick up more shares at a lower price, which will just amplify your returns when the market inevitably recovers. I know I've needed that reminder myself during some market dips.
Toughen up, cupcake. Definitely memorable. And probably necessary advice for most of us.
Mm-hmm.
So what is this powerful wealth-building tool then if it's not about trying to pick individual stocks, which he clearly discourages?
It's surprisingly, almost refreshingly simple. Low-cost index funds.
Yeah.
Specifically, he highlights two main ones. The Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund, VTSAX.
Okay, VTSAX.
And the Vanguard Total Bond Market Index Fund, VBTLX. VTSAX gives you broad exposure to essentially the entire U.S. stock market. We're talking thousands of different companies, all wrapped up in one fund at a remarkably low cost, like super low. VBTLX, the bond fund, offers stability and income, acting as a crucial counterbalance to stock volatility, especially as you get closer to needing the money, like in retirement. The beauty is that you own a tiny piece of nearly every major company, so you don't need to guess which ones will win. You just own the whole haystack.
So it's about radical simplicity and diversification all in one, rather than trying to outsmart the entire market.
That makes a lot of sense, actually.
Exactly. Collins emphatically stresses that complexity often leads to poor investment decisions. It just does. Keeping your investment strategy simple not only dramatically improves performance over time because of those lower fees, they're almost invisible, but man, they add up.
Yeah, those fees can kill you. They really can. But simplicity also significantly reduces your stress and the chances of making impulsive, costly mistakes. He's a huge proponent of auto-investing, which just means setting up consistent automatic monthly contributions. This ensures you're always buying whether the market is up or down, taking the emotion and guesswork out of it. Set it and forget it, basically.
Right. Remove yourself from the decision process day to day.
Precisely. And this emphasis on simplicity leads directly into his Magic Beans chapter 3, where he really celebrates Jack Bogle, the visionary founder of Vanguard. Bogle is the genius who pioneered these modern low-cost index funds and basically democratized investing for the everyday person. For you and me.
Yeah, he's a legend.
Total legend. Collins has immense admiration for him because Bogle fundamentally challenged the entire financial industry's reliance on expensive, actively managed funds. Bogle effectively proved, with decades of data, that low-cost indexing often outperforms expensive, actively managed funds over the long term, mostly because active managers rarely beat the market consistently, especially after you account for their higher fees. The evidence is just overwhelming now. Even many of Bogle's original critics have kind of softened their stance over the years, which is quite an endorsement, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's like he made investing accessible to absolutely everyone, not just the big institutions with their armies of analysts. Yeah. And speaking of those analysts, but that stock picking I mentioned earlier, he's incredibly direct about that, isn't he?
Oh, he is. In chapter 25, titled Why I Can't Pick Winning Stocks and You Can't Either, he uses this fantastic analogy. He says you can't pick winning stocks for the same reason. You can't just step into a boxing ring and beat Muhammad Ali in his prime. It doesn't matter how smart you are, how much research you do, the odds are simply stacked against you. You're competing against full-time professionals, sophisticated algorithms, insider information sometimes, and just sheer luck. Even professional analysts struggle to consistently outperform the market over the long term. Trying to do so is often, as he puts it rather colorfully, dangerous horse hockey. Dangerous horse hockey. That's a keeper. I like that. Okay, what about dollar cost averaging? For listeners who might not be familiar, that's typically when you invest a fixed amount regularly, say $100 every month, regardless of market ups and downs, to average out your purchase price. I always thought that was pretty standard advice to reduce risk, especially if you have a lump sum to invest. He's skeptical of that too. He is, surprisingly to some. Yeah. While dollar cost averaging, or DCA, is often pitched as a way to mitigate risk by investing a large lump sum over time in smaller increments, Collins argues it can actually cause you to miss out on potential gains, particularly during rising markets, which historically the market does more often than not. He believes it subtly encourages a kind of market timing. You're essentially betting the market will go down before you put all your money in. And that can be just as risky as trying to time the market with a lump sum in other ways. His stance is quite direct. When you have the money, invest it immediately. Get it working for you as soon as possible. Because historically, timing the market almost always beats timing the market.
Get it in and let it ride.
That's the idea. And throughout this entire process, he strongly emphasizes maximizing growth through tax-advantaged accounts. Things like your 401ks, IRAs, HSAs, if you have access to one. These are absolutely crucial tools for letting your money grow without being immediately taxed, which just turbocharges your compound returns over decades. It's like pouring rocket fuel on your investments, really.
Okay, so we've got the foundational philosophy. Aggressively tackle debt, then invest simply and consistently in low-cost index funds. And finally, develop that toughen-up, cupcake psychological resilience to ride the market waves. Got it. But then what? What happens when you get older or, approach retirement or actually hit that elusive point of financial independence? What are the practical rules for actually withdrawing money from these investments? How does that work? And what about something like Social Security? That's a huge question for so many people planning their future.
That's where part 3, aptly titled, What to Do When You Get There, comes in. It's really practical stuff. Collins discusses asset allocation, explaining how it needs to shift, or at least be considered, as you move through different life stages. During the wealth accumulation stage, when you're building wealth, you're probably heavily weighted towards stocks. He suggests something like 75% stocks, 20% bonds, 5% cash. Or even more stocks if you have a high-risk tolerance and a long time horizon. As you enter the wealth preservation stage, closer to or actually in retirement, you might shift to a slightly more conservative mix. though he still advocates for a significant stock allocation even in retirement, mainly for long-term growth and to fight inflation.
Keep some growth potential even when you're drawing down.
Exactly. And on the topic of international exposure, which comes up a lot, he suggests that for many people, investing solely in U.S. stocks, like through VTSAX, may be perfectly sufficient. His reasoning is quite practical. Many large U.S. companies are already huge global players with significant international operations and revenue streams. Think Apple, Coca-Cola, companies like that.
Right, they're everywhere.
So you're indirectly getting international exposure through their global reach without the added complexity and maybe cost of managing separate international funds. It keeps things simple, which, as you pointed out, is his whole mantra.
That makes a lot of sense. Simplicity, simplicity, simplicity. Always comes back to that. Now, the big one for retirement. How much can you actually take out of your investments each year without, running out of money? I've heard about the 4% rule. Is that what he recommends?
Yes, he delves into the 4% rule in Chapter 29, which is a widely studied concept in finance. It originated from something called the Trinity study and suggests that if you withdraw 4% of your retirement portfolio value in the first year and then adjust that dollar amount for inflation each subsequent year, you have a very high chance, around 96%, based on historical data, for a 30-year retirement with a 50-50 stock bond portfolio of not running out of money. It provides a robust, evidence-based guideline for sustainable spending in retirement.
96%. Okay, that's a strong success rate. It's not 100%, obviously, but that's pretty reassuring.
It absolutely is. But he also stresses, and this is important, that the 4% rule is a guide, not a rigid law you have to follow blindly. Sensible flexibility is what provides security, he says.
Okay.
So if the market has a particularly bad year, maybe you consider taking out a little less that year if you can. Tighten the belt slightly. If it's booming, maybe you take out a little more for a splurge or just reinvest the surplus. Be adaptable. The core idea, though, is to accumulate assets equal to at least 25 times your anticipated annual spending. That's the target that makes this rule work for financial independence. 25 times your spending.
25 times, okay.
And he even gives practical advice on how to pull that 4% efficiently. For tax reasons, he suggests strategically allocating your assets, like keep your bonds, maybe VBTLX, in traditional IRAs where growth is tax deferred, and keep your stocks, like VDSAX, in Roth IRAs where qualified withdrawals are tax-free. This structure allows you to potentially pull your higher growth stock gains out tax-free later, making your retirement income much more tax efficient.
That's a really practical tip for managing the actual money flow later on.
Smart. What about Social Security? That's such a fundamental piece of the puzzle for many people planning for the future. What's his take?
Collins acknowledges Social Security, absolutely. He discusses how delaying benefits, say from the earliest age of 62 up to age 70, can significantly increase your monthly payments. Especially if you anticipate a long life, delaying can be a substantial boost to your income. But here's his crucial, almost provocative advice, and it's something he really hammers home. Plan your financial future, assuming Social Security will not be there for you.
Wow, okay, that's bold.
It is. He's not necessarily saying it will disappear entirely, but he wants you to build enough independent wealth that F you money, so that any Social Security benefits you do receive are just a welcome bonus, maybe icing on the cake, not something you're desperately relying on to survive. It's about ultimate self-reliance and control.
Don't count on it, but be pleasantly surprised if it's there. That's the mindset. He also briefly touches on charitable giving, which is a lovely addition, I think. His advice here is basically to focus on effectiveness over sheer quantity. How can your dollar do the most good? He suggests using tools like donor-advised funds for potential tax benefits and greater control over how and when you distribute the money. But he also highlights the often overlooked value of just directly helping individuals in need, emphasizing that ultimately it's a deeply personal choice. It's based on your values and what resonates most with you.
That's a truly holistic view, isn't it? Looking beyond just the accumulation phase and into the human element, the purpose behind the wealth. Any final warnings or practical wisdom from Collins as we kind of wrap up this deep dive?
Yes, one crucial warning, and maybe it's even more relevant today than ever: financial scams. Collins says, quite starkly, everybody can be conned, even financial experts, maybe especially financial experts sometimes because they think they know better.
Ooh, scary thought.
It is. His rules to recognize scams are pretty clear. Skepticism is absolutely key. Always be skeptical, especially if something sounds too good to be true, because it probably is. Con artists often appear incredibly trustworthy. They weave a mix of truth with lies. They play on your desire for quick gains, or maybe even your belief in your own expertise or intelligence. His advice is to cultivate humility and always, always question. If it whispers promises of easy, fast, or guaranteed riches, just walk away. It's likely a trap.
That's sobering advice. So bringing it all together then, the simple path to wealth really does seem to live up to its title. Coming back to our initial question, can building real wealth, financial independence, truly be simple? Collins makes an incredibly compelling case for yes, doesn't he? By distilling wealth building down to a few core, powerful, and surprisingly straightforward principles. Consistently spending less than you earn, investing the surplus aggressively, ruthlessly avoiding debt to achieve true freedom, sticking to simple low-cost index funds, and crucially, maintaining that long-term toughen-up cupcake perspective through the market's ups and downs. It seems it's less about complexity and trying to be some kind of market genius, and much, much more about consistency and unwavering discipline over time.
Exactly. You've summed it up perfectly. And it leaves us with a truly provocative thought, I think. If achieving financial independence is fundamentally about building that FU money, that profound freedom to make choices that align with your deepest values and desires, then what does embracing this kind of financial simplicity truly mean for your life? How might it free you up, not just financially, but mentally and emotionally, to focus on the things that genuinely make life rich and beautiful, beyond just the numbers in an investment account?